Hey everybody, welcome back. This will be our last video for the semester, and so what I'm going to do here now is walk you through the required project blog entry information. I've gone ahead and posted the majority of this to the course Moodle page for now. So if you navigate to the course Moodle page, you'll see that there is an updated whiteboard assignment. This is fairly basic in that you're just posting a blog entry with all of your final submission credentials for the final project. Okay, so the video that I'm recording right now, I'll have that linked here shortly. And further on down, this is a bit more information about what you're going to be doing in your working project file. Okay, so we're going to be compiling your 3 logo designs together into what's known as a brand overview. And we'll be using your project statement as the description in the brand overview, so you won't have to write this again as part of the blog entry because it's already going to be part of the brand overview. I'm going to walk you through this process, and then also walk you through the exporting process and saving these things out as ping files that we can then submit to Blogger as a fresh blog entry post. Okay, so I'll be coming back to this information here shortly, but let's go ahead and dive right in. And what I've got up on display here is a sample document. Now this is largely based on the demo from last week. So I placed these image templates into my various artboards. I relabeled the artboards as wordmark, icon, combo, and brand overview. And I've locked down my templates layer here. So I'm working on a layer 2. And I've gone ahead and quickly designed a few variations of what I had on screen. Now along the way, I did test out a little bit of type. I outlined that type by basically taking my editable type. I went up to my type menu and down to create outlines, and what that does is it converts those to shapes. I then applied an offset path command to that text to generate this blue outline here, and then I created a rectangle and then modified the stroke of that rectangle here for my word mark. This will be an example of your word mark. Somewhat of a stylized word mark at that, I would say. The next logo design is an icon. Okay, so I ventured away from the original design here just a little bit. This is a previous student example, so this is called Stripped Soda Company. So I'm not so sure what the clothespin is there for, but there's a bit of a seal and some kind of a tree on the inside, so I just tried replicating that fairly quickly. And then I put the two together with a slightly reduced word mark and played around with a bit of the staggering of the placement of the icon to generate a bit more of a combination logo. So just for the sake of the brand overview, this is going to give us a little bit more space, this particular design, even though I feel like this one looks a little bit better. I'm going to show you how to set up the brand overview now. So in preparation for this, what you'll first want to do is toggle off the template layer. Sorry, that was my lock icon. Right next to that is your visibility option in your layers panel. So I'm toggling that off because I want to make sure that I'm not accidentally duplicating that into my brand overview or exporting that out when the time comes. So we have now cleaned up our 3 artboards here, and we should be all set to go. The last thing I want to do is select all of those components that make up each of these logos. So I'm basically just taking my regular selection tool, dragging over a selection, and pressing Command G to group. I'm going to do the same thing to all of these components here, and then I'm going to click and drag and then group those. And that will just keep things much easier as we bring them into the brand overview. Okay, so the next step is to move into the 4th artboard here and rescale this for our needs. So over here in my tool panel, near the bottom of the tool panel, there is the artboard tool. So I'm going to click on that guy. I'm going to select my artboard 4, and I'm going to change the width to 8.5, and that will give us a standard letter size document in the United States. And then I'm just going to select my regular selection tool and bounce out of that mode, the artboard mode. So what I've got to do here is turn on my rulers, and we use these as guides for setting up this composition so everything is nicely aligned. And so the way that you do this is you hold down the Command key and press the it's not working. There we go. The R key. So if you're on a PC, this would be Option R or Control R. I'm using Command because I'm on a Mac, so Command R will turn on these guides here at the top. We call these rulers. And if you do a right click on one of those rulers, you can ensure that you're using the proper measurement. So I have inches selected here, but if you have pixels or points selected, you want to make sure that you switch that to inches. So if you look closely, 0 is over here at the top left corner, and you can also see 0 here from the left. Okay, and this is counting all the way up to 8.5, and then from here 0 all the way down to 11. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. What I'm going to do is drag out my guides, and so you do this by clicking and dragging from inside the ruler area, and I'm looking over here on the left side of my screen, right over here. Okay. And where I'm going to place this is right about 3/4 of an inch. And so I'm going to hold down my Shift key when I do this, and it tends to snap to those little markers. And I'm going to drag this to about 3/4 of an inch there. Okay, maybe if I tuck this over here, you can see this a little bit better. I'm also going to drag one again from the top to make my bottom. So I'm subtracting up from 11, so about 10.25. And then I'm going to drag from the left-hand side to about right here for 3/4, and then all the way over to this side about right here, 3 3/4. And what that does is it gives me a margin space for aligning all of my brand overview content. Now, I should not be able to select my guides at this point in time. So if your guides are unlocked, you will have to go up to your View menu and down to Guides, and then lock the guides. This would actually say lock guides right here. I can unlock those and basically just treat them as line segments, but I want to make sure that those are locked down so I can't move them. If you make a mistake, just undo the command and go back and make your adjustment. So I'm going to grab my type tool, and I'm just going to use a path to type out some text here, and I'm going to type in brand overview, and it's currently set in the font I had used earlier, but I'm going to change this back to something a little bit more basic. And once again, my lowercase m key does not work when I'm using this recording software, unfortunately. So it's a bit of a bug, but I'm going to go ahead and select something that's just fairly neutral, in this case a semi-bold, and I'm going to retype this as brand overview. And so whatever font I choose here, I want to make sure that I maintain that as the formatting for this particular document. And so maybe I'll make this just a little bit smaller. Brand overview. Now it doesn't have to be in caps, it's just a preference. Okay, and perhaps that's still too big. I'm going to select that type again one more time and just punch in maybe 16 points. And we can make adjustments from there. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is just add a little bit of a separation. I'm going to grab my line segment tool here, and I'm going to click and drag from my left guide. I'm going to hold down my Shift key to constrain that proportion, and what this does for a line segment is it just snaps up and makes it perfectly horizontal. And I'm going to drag out to my other guide here and release. And when you make that line segment, you do need to go back in and increase the stroke weight. So I'm going to add a half a point stroke and make sure that I'm applying either a black or a dark gray line segment. And so you should be able to see that on screen like so. So if I wanted to quickly reformat that to be just like a dark gray, and then maybe reformat this type information to also be a dark gray, I find that to just be a little prettier than just a black. It's maybe a little bit less demanding in terms of the contrast. So brand overview, this is where we're at. I'm going to make a save to my document here. And directly underneath the brand overview, this is where you're going to have your description. So in this space here, you should basically be listing all of the conceptual information related to the business name, why you chose it, who's the target market, what is the demographic, who are you trying to sell to, and much of that is discussed right here in the blog entry post section, right? Reference the design outline related to client demographics, basically. Okay. And so what I'm going to do for that one, I want to make sure that I'm using text in a frame. So I'm going to click and drag again from my left guide and drag out a frame. So I'm not clicking once. I'm making sure that I'm clicking and dragging out a text frame. So I want to use my area text frame option. And it should fill this with placeholder text. And I'm going to go ahead and reduce that size down to regular, and then perhaps a size of 12 to 13 points. Okay, and that should give me hopefully enough. I'm going to copy this and then just paste it again so it fills that space. But you're going to actually be writing in the information here based on your specific business. So then I'm going to take my brand overview text and my line segment. I'm going to hold down my Option key, click and drag, and then hold down my Shift key. I'm going to drag it to about right in here. I'm going to do this a few more times. So once again, Option, click and drag, and then hold down the Shift key. I'm going to drag one right here. I'm going to do another one right in here. Okay. So in this second section here, this is going to be my logos or marks. This section here is going to be my swatches. And then this last section is going to be typography. Perfect. So this is the basic format of this document. There's really not much you have to do in addition to this, aside from pasting in your existing logos and generating swatches by means of object, and then typing out a little bit of typography that you happen to use inside the logo itself. So what I'm going to do here is zoom out just a little bit. I'm going to grab this group of objects making up my word mark. I'm going to hold down my Option key, click and drag, and I'm just going to drop it directly on top of my brand overview. And then I'm going to scale that down by holding Shift and an Option. And one thing you might notice here is the stroke of my back frame is maintaining the same stroke weight. So if that is the case, whenever you downscale your logo design and it doesn't look quite right, before you make that reduction, I'm going to have to go into my Illustrator preferences. I'm going to click on General. Okay, and then there's this one checkbox, Scale Strokes and Effects. It's in the second column here near the bottom, Scale Strokes and Effects. If I select that and hit OK and back out, and once again hold down Shift and Option as I downscale this logo design, you can see that the stroke has been scaled in unison with the rest of the graphic. And so I'm simply going to push this along the edge of my logos section, and I'm using my arrow keys here to kind of center that up. I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to grab my icon, zoom back out even more. I'm going to hold down Option, click, and drag directly on top of my brand overview, and I might as well do the same thing to my combo mark. Okay, so I'm going to take my icon, hold down Shift and Option, and I might just align this to my artboard at the top by clicking on this center align option, so horizontal align center, and then I can increase the size so that it's perfectly aligned to the center of my document. The last graphic here, I'm also going to scale this down, holding down Shift and Option. And I'm going to scale it down even more to about right there. I think that looks pretty good. And so I'm just spacing these out ever so slightly so that they kind of hold their own space. And I'm going to just use my arrow keys to align that to the edge. Now, if you feel like there's too much space between the graphics, what I'm going to do is just push this rightmost graphic up to the edge of my margin, and then I'm going to take my center graphic and just center that between my two other marks. Okay. I'm going to save my progress, Command S, and hopping down to swatches. Now, this is probably something I should have talked about before getting this far, but what I want to ensure here is that I have swatches saved from colors that I've used in my logo designs. So I'm using this blue color and then also this orange. So if I double click on one of my objects to get into isolation mode, it should give you a swatch selection over here to the left, either for your fill or stroke. And then you simply just take this fill and click and drag it into your swatches panel, and what that will do is create a swatch for that color. And you'll want to do that for every color you use in your logo designs so that this next step is much easier. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just use an ellipse, so just a basic ellipse here, and I'm going to drag that out holding down my Shift key. And because I'm only using two colors, what I'm going to do is just make two ellipses. So I'm going to hold down Option, click, and drag. I'm going to place that right there. My first one has already been colored that same blue, and then the second one I'm going to select and then grab that orange color that I've already saved out. Now, if this was a real brand overview, what you would have to do is go into those colors and label this information, such as the hex value, the RGB values, and the CMYK values. We would simply list those directly underneath those swatches. So if you want to go through the effort of making a small text frame with super small text, therefore listing either the RGB or the CMYK, generally it would be the CMYK because these would go to print. We would list these percentages in sequence C, M, Y, and K. Those values are specifically important. But for the sake of this project and kind of streamlining it, I'm not going to require you to do that. You can simply have the colored swatches here for now. The last step of building the brand overview is to type out the text that you've used within the logo design itself. So what I'm going to do here again is, actually maybe the easiest way to do this is to grab some of my editable text still. So I'm holding down Option, clicking and dragging. Just because it's easier to find the name of this text this way. And so I'm just going to downscale this a little bit more. This is Bebas Noya, okay, in bold. Okay, so I'm going to type that out here first. Some fonts will only be available in caps and others will have lowercase options. I'm simply typing out what I've used, and I'm going to reformat that text to be roughly 16 points. So it'll be about the same as my typography header. So I have the name of the font that I've used, and then I'm going to hold down Option, click and drag down, and then this is going to be a listing of all of the characters within that font, at least the text characters. So if you have lowercase letter forms, I'm going to type in a capital A and then a lowercase a, capital B and a lowercase b, and you can see that I do not have lowercase type options for this specific font. That's okay. In this case, I would just type in A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. You get the picture, right? H, I, J, K. W, X, Y, and Z. Have to think about it. And you'll also notice that I'm missing my M because my M is not functional when I'm using this screen recording software, unfortunately. And you can also type in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and any other special characters you'd like to be part of the presentation. So that's kind of up to you. And what this is doing here is it just gives you a nice visual representation of the characters that are available for the font that you're using to define the identity of the business. This can be somewhat important if you're making additional materials, collateral materials such as newsletters, envelopes, business cards, all these various things. The more text options you have here, the better off you're going to be. Okay, so that's really it in a nutshell for the brand overview. The last thing here would just be to organize the layout. So if you need a little bit more space for some of these sections, feel free to kind of rearrange these so that they're more properly spaced out. Or if you need more room for your text up top, push everything else down, and then also downscale the type of the description. And all of these marks will not export. So if I hold down Command and press the colon key, which is right next to the L key on the keyboard, this is a key combination that will give you a better idea of what this is going to look like when it comes time to export. The last part of this process is to simply save our progress, and when we are okay with calling this finished, we need to export out all of these artboards. And so the first thing you want to do is just make sure that your logos are sized appropriately in those artboards. So I'm giving myself a little bit of margin space around the outside of the graphics and giving them a little bit more influence or girth, I suppose, inside each of those artboards. And then the last one, the brand overview, will be exported a little bit larger. So you will have saved yourself a little bit of time in terms of naming conventions when these files go out if you change the names of these artboards here. Wordmark, icon combo, and brand overview. If you simply double click in the empty space here, it's going to activate that artboard. So if I double click here, double click here, double click here, you can see that I'm kind of moving through the active selection of these artboards. This is going to be fairly important because we can only export out one of these artboards at a time using the method that I'd like you to use. So you'll be running through this sequence 4 times that I'm going to do right now. Okay, so hopping back over here, note that number 2, we're going to be exporting out these files as ping24 images with a max dimension of 1200 pixels for the logos and 2500 pixels on the max dimension for the brand overview. So it also notes that you're going to have to save these artboards individually by selecting them in the artboards panel prior to saving. So I'm going to start with artboard 1. I'm going to go up to my File, Export, Save for Web Legacy command. Okay, now let me just resize this. I'm going to go up here to my preset. I'm going to select ping24. I'm going to turn off transparency and make sure that my matte is set to white. Okay, and then I'm going to select one of my image size options and I'm going to change this to 1200, hit my tab key, and then I'm going to go ahead and save that. Okay, so back on my desktop I have my working project 2 folder, and maybe I should save this as P2. I'm going to save this as my Word, maybe Final Web Wordmark. I can use capital M's, I just can't use lowercase m's. That should be good. I'm going to hit save. It takes me back to Illustrator. I'm going to double click on my icon artboard over here. Go back up to File, Export, and Save for Web Legacy. So same process here. Turn off transparency, make sure the matte is set to white. I'm going to type in 1200 for my new size and save. I'm going to select this image that I just previously saved, and then I'll just change the ending of this name to icon. Okay, double click combo, back up to File, Export, Save for Web Legacy, same settings, 1200 for the size, save, and this is going to be my combo. Just so that we have the M in there. Okay, and then double click on the brand overview artboard, back up to File, Export, Save for Web Legacy. And the settings for this one are just slightly different. So the height is longer. So hopping back over to my web browser here, you can see that I am telling you to use a max dimension of 2500 pixels. So for my height, that's what I want to change to 2500. Hit my tab key, and then hit save. And then we'll call this Final Web. BO for brand overview. How about that? Okay, so I'm going to once again save my Illustrator document, my working file. And I'm going to close this down so it's just out of the way. I'm going to hop back over to my web browser and open up Blogger. And I know that this is not the correct blog. Make sure that whenever you sign in that it is under your account and under the appropriate Intro to Computer Graphic Design blog. I'm going to click on New Post. Then the post title. Go back here to the blog entry posts section of the course Moodle page. Copy and paste the title that I've given you. And then here in this open area, the primary field of the blog, we're going to choose our image files, and we're going to navigate to that specific folder that we had been working out of. So the ones that I want are Wordmark, Icon, Combo, and BO. I'm just holding down Shift between those selections and hitting Choose. So those should populate on screen. Make sure all of them are selected in blue, and then we'll add those to the page. And then one at a time, let's select the extra large option so that those can be previewed just a little bit larger on the blog entry itself. And if you could start with the brand overview at the top, you can just rearrange these by clicking and dragging. Start with the brand overview at the top, and then the rest of the sequence really doesn't matter to me a whole lot, but if you want to put these in sequential order, this one would go first. Right? See if I can do this on screen here. It's not letting me. So I'd maybe have to pull them in one at a time if I want to rearrange them. My web browser is also fairly small at the moment, so if I made this larger, I should be able to drag these around. Okie dokie, and then publish. And then make sure that you view the blog and ensure that the blog has been properly posted. So in a nutshell, that's what you have due for next Wednesday. And just remember that this is Wednesday the 29th at 1:30, which is when this is due. There is no examination, written exam for this class this semester. I'm just kind of doing away with that, and this is going to take the place of that requirement. So finish up the project, try many variations, many color combinations, different typographic relationships. Try your best, and that will be the last thing that you have to do for the class this semester. It was a lot of fun getting to know you guys this semester, and feel free to take another one of my graphic design courses next semester if you'd like. There are a number of them available, including illustration. So if you had a lot of fun with this project, maybe consider signing up for another class in the future. Otherwise, I wish you the best over the summer and during this very weird time of the COVID-19 quarantine. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you next semester. Good luck.